we are going to talk tonight about everything you need to know about college applications, the FAFSA, and I'm calling this the who, what, when, where, why, and how. We're going to start with college applications, and the first half is going to be primarily talking about college applications. The second half is going to be all about the FAFSA. So if you're looking at this and you're like, I really wanted to know about money, just hang tight with me and we will get there. If you have questions as we go, do not hesitate to type those in the chat box. I have my esteemed colleague, Johnny Bergman, checking those chats. And so if you have questions, don't hesitate to get those in there and he will answer those. And if it's something that I need to address so that everyone can hear it, I'm happy to do that as well. And just one more disclaimer, we are recording this. So we do ask that you keep your cameras off just so that we're not broadcasting your personal lives via our webinar series. So getting started, who is KHEAA? KHEAA is the state aid agency that helps you with the information regarding paying for college, getting into college, money that you're getting while you're in college, whether that be grants, scholarships, loans, savings plans, anything like that. So if you have questions about any of those types of things, that's what KHEAA is here for. We provide free information, we provide free services, and we have free outreach counselors. That's what Johnny and I do. We are outreach counselors, and typically in a normal world, we go out into schools, libraries, colleges, and talk to students about how to pay for college, how to get money for college, how to apply to college. Because we are in a pandemic, we're coming to you virtually these days. We do almost everything virtually, whether that be helping students file the FAFSA, doing webinars, and we have more in our webinar series, and I share that with you toward the end. We'll talk a little bit more about the webinar series. And what else you can learn virtually. We do just about everything virtually now. Social media, we have lots of social media offerings for you via Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter, and we can share that information with you as well. So we're going to jump right in and get started with the who should submit college applications. So right now, we have a lot of people with us that are juniors. So I'm sure you're thinking about college applications, and the good news for you is you have a little bit of time. If you are a senior and you're coming to go ahead and submit those college applications, it is time. And so people who should submit college, you're a college student, and you've had 2 years of community college and you want to transfer to a 4-year next year, now would be the time to submit that application. Any adult interested in returning to college, and anyone who wants to attend college in the fall. And so if you're a junior, you're going to wait until fall of next year. And I always like to tell students Labor Day is a really good time to keep in your head about when you should begin your application process. Labor Day is kind of the time when colleges have wrapped up the previous class. They've gotten all of their freshmen in, they've gotten their freshman orientation and everything out of the way. That class is settled, and now they're really looking forward to admitting their new class of students. And so Labor Day of your senior year is go time in terms of submitting college applications. So if you find yourself a senior in high school or a current college student or an adult who wants to go, Labor Day is a good time to get those college applications in. What is needed when you are applying to college? Colleges will need different things based on where you decide you want to go. So the college will have certain requirements, what you need for your application. Some may need extra things for scholarship applications. If you want to do like an honors program or an honor school, they may even have separate things to apply. But in terms of admissions, they typically ask for demographic information via the application. And if you are a parent joining us, most of the applications today are online. So it is rare that we see a student filling out a paper application these days. And we'll talk about where you find those in a moment. You want to also submit a high school transcript. Almost every college that is admitting you is going to want a high school transcript. These days, most public schools do their transcript exchange via parchment.com. And that is an online site that your student can set up an account for, and then they can request that their counselor send that transcript to their college. It's a really easy, streamlined process once that account gets set up. But often we will have students say, I don't know how to get my transcript to this college, and it's just a matter of they haven't set up their Parchment account yet. If you attend a private school or a school that doesn't use Parchment, it's important to talk to your high school guidance counselor about how they want you to request your transcripts. Usually there are some processes in place, and so you want to ask them what is the best way to do that. When you submit your transcript your senior year of high school, if you're starting up at Labor Day, that go time, it's only going to have grades up through the end of your junior year. And most colleges are okay with that. It is not uncommon, however, for a college to ask for something called 7th semester grades. So if you're a student who maybe your grades aren't as good as you wanted them to be, or you had a year that was kind of rough, or maybe you were a junior during a pandemic and it is hard to keep up, and some of our best students are struggling in this virtual environment, and your grades your junior year just aren't as good as you wanted them to be because of this situation. It's not uncommon to either voluntarily send 7th semester grades or for a college to ask for those. And so your 7th semester is that first semester of your senior year. And so at Christmas, you can always send 7th semester grades to your college just to, if you want a higher scholarship, or if you want them to take those grades into consideration, or again, they may request those from you. Test scores are sometimes requested when you're applying for college. And I say sometimes because there's a new trend in college admissions that is called test optional. And what that is you can take a test optional route when you're applying to a college, where basically you say, I want to apply and I want you to look at who I am holistically, rather than look at a test score and decide whether or not I can come to your college based just on that. Now, if your student took the ACT and they got a 28 or they got a 30, test optional may not be the way they want to go. They may want to just go ahead and submit those test scores. But if you have a student who has test taking anxiety, and maybe their test scores don't reflect how they can function academically, or if, again, we're in the middle of a pandemic, if it's hard to get your ACT score because you can't get to a site to test and you want to go test optional, a lot of colleges are taking the route where you are test optional. If you decide you don't want to submit your test scores, I believe most colleges will keep you on that track. So if Labor Day of your senior year, you're applying, you decide to go the test optional route, and then in December, you take the ACT and you get a 32 on it, a lot of times at that point, you still cannot submit that. So you'll need to, decide up front which way you want to go, whether it be test optional or to submit your test scores. Some colleges still require an essay or a personal statement for admissions. Some still require recommendation letters, not all of them. And many of them are moving away from that and saving the essay and the recommendation letters more for scholarship purposes than admission purposes. But be prepared, especially if you're applying to really high-end colleges, Ivy League schools, they're going to want an essay or a personal statement and recommendation letters. I know I'm listening to I see a lot of parents are here with us today, and I know how our students are, it could be 10 o'clock at night and they're on their computer and they decide they want to apply to a college. And then they see that there's an essay requirement, and your student may believe, well, I'll just go ahead and type up this essay really quickly and submit it, and that's the best way to go. And I'm here to tell you, we know, I used to be in admissions. We know when we get an essay that was typed and turned in that night or that day. We know when it has not been proofread, when there's not been a second person with a set of eyes on that. So be really careful about those essays. If you're a student here and you're listening to me, I want you to write that essay. If it's required for scholarship or for application, I want you to write that essay, and I want you to have a couple of different people take a look at that essay, edit it, give you some suggestions, and don't just write it off the cuff and submit it. And if you're a parent here, I want you to talk to your student about that, because again, it could be what sets your application apart. It could be what sets you aside, especially if you maybe don't have the grades or the test score, or you weren't as involved and you need something else to really make you stand out. That essay could be it. Some colleges ask for a resume of your involvement. Some colleges don't, and it's still just a good idea to submit it as a supplemental piece to your application, because some students are really involved, and that really is a hallmark of who they are as a student. And so we want our admissions counselors to see that. And so you can always submit a resume of involvement. And some colleges will ask for an application fee. Application fees simply are there to process the application. A lot of times, if you're applying online, the application fee can be subsequent. So you could say, I don't want to apply, or I don't want to pay right now, and you can send in a check or call later with a credit card that they can run and pay that application fee. And some application fees are really high. So I want you and your students to be sure when you apply to that college that you're serious and you really could see yourself there and you're interested and you want more information. Because like I said, those application fees can be kind of expensive sometimes. If you are having trouble paying your application fees for your colleges, there can be waivers available to you. If you qualify for free or reduced price lunch, and I know a lot of schools in Kentucky have a grant that makes it so that nobody pays for school lunch. And so you wouldn't be eligible for a waiver just if you receive free lunch. But if you've applied and you have an application on file, and your typically it's your family resource coordinator or someone like that, youth service person, they have an application for you. And if you do qualify for free or reduced price lunch, there are fee waivers out there. So talk to your guidance counselor about that and be sure you get those fee waivers sent to that college so that they know not to be expecting an application fee for you. And then sometimes there are just fun fee waivers. Like if you visit a campus, they may give you a coupon for a fee waiver for an application, or if you apply online. This used to be a thing a long time ago. If you apply online, you got your fee waived, but almost everybody applies online now. So I don't think that's a thing anymore. But there are ways to get those fees waived. So definitely be sure to check into that with your college if you are having trouble or you just don't want to have to pay the fee. At this point, I do always like to address how many applications we think that you should submit to colleges. My recommendation is always to have your students, or you yourself, if you are a student, apply to between 3 and 5 colleges. I like for students to have at least 3. Because you may not get in. So if you have a dream school, if you have a student who says, I'm only going to Harvard, or even let's go less than that, I'm even going to UK. I'm only going there, so that's the only place I have to apply. But then maybe they take a tour and it doesn't feel as comfortable as they thought it would on campus. You want to, have some options. You want to be able to say, well, okay, you didn't like that school, but it's a good thing we applied to this school. So it's important that you apply to at least 3. And I like to say we used to call them safety schools. I don't love that term. I like to just say apply to a school that you know you can get into and you know you can pay for. And a lot of times schools are very expensive. So it is the community college. And community college is a great choice. I always recommend every student apply to their local community college because that is a good place to land if you didn't get into the school that you want to go to, or you get down to the nitty gritty and you realize you're not able to afford the college that you wanted to go to. The community college already has your application. You don't then have to start from scratch. So I always recommend for everyone to apply to the community college in your area. So you want to have that safe school that you know you can get into, you know you can pay for. Then you want to have something we call a reach school, or a dream school, something that you may not get admitted to, something that you may feel like might be a stretch for me to get admitted to this college. Or maybe it's a stretch for me to be able to pay for this college, but I'm really hoping to get some financial aid and scholarships. So you have that safe school, you have that reach school, and then you have some schools in between. And that's how I advise students to apply to college. I never advise applying for more than 5 or 6 colleges at once, just because you begin to get lots of correspondence from those colleges. And it's easy to have that correspondence slip through the cracks when you're dealing with so many schools. So before you start your application process to college, you really need to narrow your list down to between 3 and 5 colleges. Back when I was in admissions, there would be students who, back then we asked, where all have you applied? And the students would list 10 or 12 colleges. And those typically were very good students. And we would be emailing them, mailing them letters, calling them saying, we want you to come because you're a candidate for our top scholarship. And they couldn't keep up with the correspondence. They weren't getting back with us, and they weren't reading that mail, and they weren't registering for events because they had just applied to too many colleges. They couldn't keep up with all of it. So I do recommend that 3 to 5 number is kind of the sweet spot, and be sure that you narrow it down long before it's time to apply and pay those application fees. When should I apply? So deadlines for applications vary based on the college. Just today in our Instagram Live, I spoke with an admissions counselor from WKU, and he said that their priority deadline was February 1st. Okay, so that is specific to their college. So your college, wherever you're looking, may have a different deadline. So it's important that you know those deadlines. What is a priority deadline? What is an early action deadline? What is kind of a last minute deadline? And when you begin applying fall of your senior year, that you're meeting those deadlines and you're not missing out on something just because you missed a deadline. So definitely be sure that you're staying in contact with those colleges to know when their deadlines are, and also to know that you have submitted everything you need to submit. So on the previous screen, when I talked about everything that might be required of you, that's kind of an exhaustive list. So there are probably very few colleges that require all of those things, and every college requires different things. And so it's important that you stay in close contact with that college so that you know that they have everything they need in order to evaluate your application. If they don't have everything they need, you may not be hearing from them, and you may just think, oh, I'm waiting to hear if I've been admitted, but they may still be waiting for you to submit something. So you want to stay in close contact with them to ensure that they have everything they need. And that's where, again, if you don't follow us on social media platforms, get out your phone while I'm talking, and I will not be offended. Go to our social media pages and follow our social media pages on Facebook. It's Kentucky Higher Education Assistance Authority, and we're going to share all of this later too, so don't feel like you have to do it right now. But if you're bored with what I'm saying, this is a good way to pass the time. On Instagram, we're KHEAA Outreach, and on Twitter, we're at KHEAA. And so if you follow us, we have an Instagram Live that we just did today, and it's an interview with an admissions counselor. And he really talks about the importance of getting to know your admissions counselor and being in close contact with that person. And that is so vitally important, I think, for every college, because that person is your inside source to that college. They're your advocate for that college. So you can, if you know that person, if you feel comfortable with that person, you can always reach out to them and say, hey, I haven't heard from you guys, just check and make sure you have everything you need. And they can pull up your account and look right then and there. And so those admissions counselors are really important whenever they're getting in touch with you for good reason. They want to help you through this process. If you are a current college student and you're transferring colleges, you want to apply the semester before you want to attend. So I often see this question coming when I'm working with a senior who knows they want to go to community college for 2 years and then transfer to a 4-year. And they will often ask me, well, do I go ahead and apply to my 4-year college now when I'm a senior, even though I'm not going to go for the next couple of years? And the answer to that is no, because that's going to confuse your college. You don't want to apply to the 4-year college that you're transferring to, or whatever college you're transferring to, until the semester before. So even if it is, you're going to start in January at a 4-year college, you will apply to them the semester just before that, so the fall semester. Another question I get all the time, because now we file the FAFSA. So if you have ever done this process before, the last 3 or 4 years, like back in the Ice Age when I went to college, we filed FAFSA as of January 1st. That's always how things worked. Now we do it as of October 1st. We're going to talk more about that, but we do that as of October 1st. And so people say, okay, Labor Day is when we're looking to start applying to colleges, and October 1st is when we're applying for the FAFSA. Which does it matter which one I do first? And the answer is no, not really. It doesn't matter which one you do first. The important thing is that you do both, because a college doesn't typically process any award letter, any aid for you until they have both a complete admissions application and a completed FAFSA, a completed and correct FAFSA. And so sometimes students are waiting and waiting and waiting to hear back about their money, their financial aid. And when we start digging to figure out why they're not able to figure out what their aid is, when we look, we say, oh, there were still parts of the application that weren't turned in, and your college is still waiting to admit you even before they give you an award letter. And so when it comes down to it, it doesn't matter if you apply first or if you submit a FAFSA first, but what's very important is that you do both. They have to have both the complete application for your admission and the complete and correct FAFSA. So we want to be really sure we're careful about getting both of those on there. Where do I apply? And listen, this is my disclaimer on this slide. I'm not saying these are the colleges where you should apply. When I was reviewing this presentation, I thought, oh, it kind of looks like I'm, advertising for some colleges here. And I'm not. All great colleges in Kentucky, or all the colleges in Kentucky, are great. But these pictures are to show you that the colleges typically make it very easy on their websites to find where you apply to get your admission application in. If you look at the WKU one, that is literally the home screen when you go to it on your cell phone. And so apply is right there on the home screen. They want you to know right here, this is how you apply. Both UK and Kentucky Wesleyan, when I went to their websites, it wasn't on the home screen, but the word apply was somewhere in a menu that I found. And then this took us to the application pages. So in terms of where you apply to college, you want to go to the website of the colleges you're interested in. And then you want to find where the application is. You want to click that apply button, and then it'll take you to where you apply. The other thing that I want to reiterate is college applications online can sometimes be really hard to navigate. I know like one application out there, as soon as you click to apply, it makes you decide, are you an international or a domestic student? And sometimes 17-year-olds don't know what that means, and that's okay. Those are complicated terms. And so if you ever feel like you just can't navigate the application and you're not able to get it in because you can't navigate it, there is help out there for you. Your high school guidance counselor, your admission counselor at your college, your outreach counselor at KHEAA, we are all here to help you even through the college application process. And so whenever you look for those applications, if you do find a hurdle, if you're like, I don't know what to do to get past this, reach out to somebody, reach out to one of us at KHEAA, and we're happy to get you over that hurdle. In terms of something that was said in the chat earlier, someone said they were currently also on a Common App webinar. And I don't know why Common App didn't, look at the KHEAA schedule and schedule around us, but it's okay. I'm just joking. Of course, they wouldn't schedule around KHEAA. They don't even know who KHEAA is probably. But the Common App is a great way if your student has several different colleges they want to apply for, and they don't want to have to fill out lots and lots of applications. The Common App is a really great place to look, because the Common App is essentially one application that several colleges have agreed will take this instead of our application. And so you can fill out that one application and then it goes to that college. One thing I want to warn you about, though, is I want you to look at the list of colleges that accept the Common Application before you apply with the Common App. Because if you want to apply to 5 schools and 2 of those schools accept the Common App, but your other 3 don't, and then there's also a section of the Common App where your specific college may ask for supplements, and so they may ask for other things that the Common Application doesn't ask for. So if 2 of your 5 schools accept the Common App, and of those 2 schools, one of them has a whole long list of supplements that they request, really weigh your options and see if that's saving you time or if it's just as easy to apply to each school individually. Again, though, if you're looking at the Common App and 4 of your 5 schools accept it, but one of them doesn't, by all means, that's going to save you some time. So do a little bit of homework there and make sure that your colleges accept the Common Application before you fill it out. But it is a great way to save time, and it's a wonderful process to work with Common App. All right, I'm trying to get my slides. We're getting ready to switch over to FAFSA. Okay, who should file a FAFSA? First of all, current seniors. So I have a lot of juniors with us today. I want you to know everything we're talking about when we talk about the FAFSA is for you for next year. You don't file the FAFSA until you're a senior in high school. And it is wonderful that you're already getting this information and you're prepared to do this next year, because it comes on like gangbusters. You start school and then the FAFSA opens up right away, ready for you to file. So I love that you guys are getting started early. Other people who should file a FAFSA are current college students, because you do have to file a FAFSA every single year that you're in college. So it's not just a one and done. You don't file it your senior year and then you're done for the next 4 years. You file it your senior year of high school, your freshman year of college, your junior year of college, and even your senior year if you want to go to graduate school. Any adults wanting to return to college also should file the FAFSA. Even families who don't think that they qualify, that they will qualify for free money or any money, should file a FAFSA, because the FAFSA is your gateway. We're going to talk a little bit more about this. I don't know if you guys can hear this, but my children are screaming in the background, and I apologize if you can hear that. I have like a whole bunch of very young children, and they're, you know, it's a Thursday night, maybe a full moon. I don't know, somebody's screaming. But even if you don't think that you'll qualify for the money, the FAFSA is your gateway. You can get nothing. You can't get student loans. You can't get parent loans. You can't work on campus without a FAFSA. So that's why we say anyone who thinks they might need even a little bit more money for college should file a FAFSA. Even if you're applying for just scholarships, even if you think, okay, we make too much money, we're not going to qualify for anything on the FAFSA, we're just wanting scholarships. Some scholarships still require to see your FAFSA on file, to see what's called a student aid report. And so it's important that you file a FAFSA no matter what. I always say your senior year of high school, everyone should file. What is needed when you file a FAFSA? So first of all, the application is found at FAFSA.gov. That is the online site where we go. It is very important that you remember .gov, because there are .com, there are FAFSA.coms out there that will walk you through the process as if you're filing the FAFSA. And then when you get to the very end, it asks you to pay a lot of money typically to submit your FAFSA. The FAFSA stands for the first F in FAFSA stands for free. It is the free application for federal student aid. And so it is very important that you're not paying to file a FAFSA. It is a free site. It is a government run site. So don't pay for that. You're going to be paying for enough over the next 4 years. Don't also pay to file the FAFSA. And that is found at FAFSA.gov. Both the student who's applying to college and one parent who the student lives with need something called an FSA ID. Now, right now, I want to address this one parent who the student lives with. So when a student files the FAFSA, it says there for dependent students. You may be thinking, I don't know what that means. I'm going to tell you. A student is dependent essentially if they live with their parents. If a student is 24, married, has a baby of his or her own, is in legal guardianship of anyone other than his or her parents, is in foster care, already has a bachelor's degree, or is active duty in the military, those students are independent students. So anyone who can say yes to any of those things, married, have a baby, 24, foster care, legal guardianship, active duty, anyone who can say yes to those things is an independent student. And those students do not need any parent information on the FAFSA. So when they're going through this process, they only need their own information. They only need an FSA ID for themselves. They don't need any parents, grandparents, anything like that. If you have a very specific case that you're interested in asking about, on the chat function, you can switch who is receiving your message, who is receiving your question, and you can change it to just John Bergman, co-host, and you can ask him your very specific, I didn't want to do that, your very specific question, especially if it's personal, has any personal information in it, and he is happy to answer that question for you. But if you are a more straightforward household, maybe you're a mom and dad, or just a mom or just a dad living with your student, you are going to file the FAFSA with that parent. So if I am a senior and I live with just my mom because my parents are divorced, my mom is the only person who's going to go on that FAFSA with me. She's the only parent that goes on there. If I am a senior and I live with my dad and he's married to my stepmom, both my dad and my stepmom are going to go on my FAFSA as my parents. So that question comes up a lot. If a student's biological parents are divorced, who should they file under? And they're always going to file under the person who they are with 50% of the time or more. So the person they're physically living with more often, not who they file taxes, who claims them on their tax return, not who pays the most amount of child support, nothing like that. The person who they live with the most often is who they're going to file their FAFSA under. And then in that case of a dependent student, the student and one of those parents who they live with need something called an FSA ID. And the FSA ID is a really fancy way of saying a username and password for the FAFSA. That's really all it is. It's a username and password that you create for the FAFSA. And that website is fsaid.ed.gov. I believe it's in the chat somewhere. I believe John already texted that out. But that is the website you go to. You apply, do the whole process for the student, and then you start over and do the whole process for the parent. And whenever you're doing that, you do need social security numbers for the parent and the student. It is very important that you check, double check, and recheck that social security number. Don't guess. I have a lot of students who say, well, I think it's this. We're not going to file it on something we think is our social security number. It has to be your actual social security number because it's a really messy process if you mess that up and we have to go in and fix your social security number. You need a valid email address for each person. So an email address that you can get into, an email address that you can, that you know the password to, an email address that you actively use, and also your own email address. I know it is very common for students to use their parents' email address when they're filling things out. And we don't want to do that for the FSA ID because the parents will then need to create an FSA ID for themselves, and only one FSA ID can be associated with each email address. And so it's really important that the student has their own and the parent has their own, and that the student uses their own personal email address and not their school email address. The school does delete that when you graduate. And so if you were to need to get back into that to retrieve a username and password, you wouldn't be able to use that email address. And so if you're just using your school email address, if you're a junior and you're listening and you only have your school email address, it's a good idea to go ahead and create a Gmail or a Yahoo or a Hotmail account so that you do have your own personal email address whenever you file for your FSA ID. And also a valid cell phone number, because you have the opportunity to link your cell phone number with your FSA ID account. That way, if you were to get locked out, they can send you some retrieval information to your cell phone, and it's just a much quicker and easier process that way. So other things needed to file the FAFSA is an alien registration number if applicable. Your 2000, so this, okay, this, I have 2019 tax returns because this is for seniors. So if you're a junior and you're watching, you're going to use your 2020 tax returns for the FAFSA. So the way it gets kind of complicated, but the way I want you to think about it is you're applying for the year that you're going to college. So if you're a junior right now, let me make sure I get this right in my head. You're going to go to college in the 22-23 school year. I believe that's correct. And so you will use the prior year's taxes. So if you're going to college in 22, you're going to, if you're starting college in 22, you are going to use 2020 tax returns. Okay, does that make sense? So if you're a senior listening, you're going to use 2019 taxes. If you're a junior listening, you're going to use 2020 taxes. If you are younger than that, you're going to have to figure it out yourself because my brain doesn't work that fast. But basically, the year that you apply, if it opens on October 1st, the year that you apply, you're going to use the previous year's tax returns, okay? Because they're completed already. You've already done them, you've got them in hand, and you're ready to upload them into your FAFSA. We want tax returns for both the student and the parent. So again, if you're a dependent student living with your parents, you also will need to upload your tax returns if you worked in that year that you're filing on. So if you had 2019 tax returns, you would put those in there. If you had 2020, if you're a junior, you would put those in there. And then we also need to know income earned for each parent if the parents are married. If the parent you're filing under is married, we need to know income for each one of those. The best place to find that is the parents' W-2s. So it's important when you sit down to file that you not only have your tax returns with you, but you also have your W-2s from the previous year so that you can separate out. Your taxes only tell us what you made as a family, what you made as a couple. And we want to know on the FAFSA who made what did mom make, what did dad make. And so it's very important that you have those W-2s there. The number one piece of information that a family forgets to bring whenever they meet with me to file the FAFSA, or if they're meeting with me virtually, they forget to have on hand, is the W-2s for the student. If the student worked in the previous year, so again, if you're a junior and you're filing the 2022 FAFSA and you're using your 2020 taxes, if your junior worked in 2020, you will need their W-2s for 2020 when you file your student's FAFSA. So it's important to have those with you to put that information in. You will need to put in any untaxed income. The most common untaxed income I see is child support. So if you're receiving child support or paying child support, you'll need to have those numbers on hand. And then any assets that you may have. Again, this is for parents. Most students don't have a whole lot of assets at this point. You might have some, and in which case we want to know about those. But if parents have assets, the assets that qualify for the FAFSA are different than what you would think of an asset in general. Whenever I think of assets in general, I'll start thinking about homes, cars, retirement, things like that. None of those things actually count for the FAFSA. So let's talk for a second about what counts as an asset and what doesn't count as an asset. So for the FAFSA, the things that do not count, the things that you will not report and you will not include on your FAFSA, going to be things like your house, personal property, like your cars and your boats. Anything earmarked for retirement, 401ks, pensions, anything like that. Businesses, if they employ fewer than 100 people, your home, I think I already said that one, and your farm, if you live on it. If you do live on your farm, it counts as your home and it doesn't qualify as an asset. Things that we do count as an asset: checking and savings, cash on hand, stocks, bonds, CDs, investments, real estate that you don't live in. So if you have rental homes, those will count as assets for the FAFSA. Farms that you don't live on, and businesses that employ more than 100 people. And the way the FAFSA sets it up is as you're putting in your information, it's kind of doing some calculations in the background. And it calculates for you something called an asset threshold. And basically it will say, as of today, do your and your wife, your spouse, your husband, do your and your spouse's assets exceed this number? And that number might be $1,000. It might be $6,000. It might be $10,000. And when you add up all of these things that qualify as an asset on the FAFSA, if they exceed that number, then you report on all of those things. You tell us what all that money is, how much you have in checking and savings, in investments, in real estate, in businesses, things like that. If you add all of that up, let's say your asset threshold is $6,000, and you add all of that stuff up, and it's $5,999, you don't write any, you just say no, and you go on, and none of your assets count for the FAFSA. So it does shelter some of those assets for you. There may be a lot of questions about assets, I'm not sure, but feel free to ask those, because that's what we're here for, to help you through this sticky stuff, to help you through the stuff that, you know, gets complicated. When should you file a FAFSA? So for the 21, again, this is for seniors, so this is why it talks about 21-22. For the 21-22 school year, the FAFSA opened October 1st, 2020. For the 22-23 school year, it will open October 1st, 2021. So if you're a junior or a junior parent here listening tonight, your date that you want to keep in mind for FAFSA. So if you remember that what we're keeping in mind for applications is Labor Day. What we're keeping in mind for FAFSA is October 1st, 2021. Keep that in mind. And you're filing for the following school year. So the FAFSA runs for a school year. So if you'll notice, it says 21-22. A FAFSA is good for a whole school year, not a calendar year. So you'll be filing for the 22-23 school year. There's no deadlines, so it's never too late. I get asked that a lot this time of year. Is it too late to file a FAFSA? It's not. There's no deadline on the FAFSA. Your school may have put in place some deadlines, and so you want to be aware of those when you're filing the FAFSA. But in terms of the general FAFSA, there's no deadline. You can file it anytime you want to. And you do file each year for the following year of college. So again, just to reiterate, you don't just file your senior year. You're going to file every single year that you're in college, and you can even apply. You can even file a FAFSA for graduate school. They're just going to offer you a bunch of loans, but you can still apply for some financial aid for graduate school. Okay, why apply to the FAFSA? First of all, let's do why apply to colleges. We want you to apply to 3 to 5 colleges that match your interests, and you want to choose those colleges based on the things that you're interested in. So you want to think about the location of your college. Do you want to be close to home? Do you want to be far away from home? Do you want a college that offers a major and a minor that you're interested in? Do you want a college that has a specific sports team that you want to play for? Does the college have your organizations that you might be interested in getting involved in? You want to find those colleges that match your interests and your needs, and you want to apply to those 3 to 5. Again, just to reiterate, one that you're sure you can get into and afford, one that you would like to attend, and one that's maybe a reach school or a dream school. You want to file the FAFSA as your starting point to getting your aid. So it is your jumping off point. Like I said at the beginning, you cannot get student loans, you cannot work on campus, you cannot get parent loans. So I always say the people who need to file a FAFSA are the people who are not prepared to write a check to cover tuition, room, board fees, books, everything else, and extra expenses for college each year. So if you're not prepared to write that check, you should file a FAFSA. Again, because you typically can't get anything. Some colleges will even not disperse your KHEAA award to you until you have a FAFSA on file. So it's important that everyone file it. Your college must have the completed admission application and the FAFSA in order to give you an award letter, in order to give you an idea of what you'll be getting to help you pay for college in terms of your scholarships, grants, loans, work study, all of the different types of money that you can get to help you pay for college. There are resources all over to help you with this information. You have an outreach counselor, and I'll explain that a little bit. Your outreach counselor, so that's what I am, that's what John is, we're here helping you today. We are assigned a territory, and so you have an outreach counselor that is specific to you, and you can always reach out to us. There is an outreach map where you can locate your county and you can figure out who your outreach counselor is, and then you have access to our social media pages, you have access to our cell phone numbers, our email addresses, and we actually answer those. So if you text us something, we're actually going to answer you. We are real people. Social media platforms, KHEAA has a Facebook page, a Twitter, an Instagram, a YouTube, and a Snapchat. So you can, I believe John shared those above in the chat, but you can find us and follow us on those platforms. We provide a wealth of information on those platforms. We do have more coming in our webinar series. So today we're talking about college apps and FAFSAs. On the 4th of March, we're going to be talking about scholarships. On the 1st of April, we're going to be talking about money and financial literacy. And on April 15th, we're going to be talking about getting in and your guide to getting into college. So if you're a junior and you're watching this, mark your calendar for April 15th, because you definitely want to get in on that one. You can text outreach to the 800 number on the screen, and you will get timely information, timely updates on what you need to be doing and how to do that via text. We don't overload you. We don't send a whole bunch of text messages, 1 or 2 a month, but they are typically all about where you are in the process and what you need to be doing at that time in order to ensure you're getting into college and you can pay for college as well. And pretty much every time we text you, we include a link to reach out to us personally, to find your outreach counselor and to reach out to us personally. And so you can always, it's kind of a monthly reminder of how to get in touch with us. And so I like for people to follow to opt into our text messages and get our text messages. The other thing it does is you can text us at that number, and it goes to a real live person. So if you text that 800 number, you know, maybe it's 11 o'clock tonight, and all of a sudden you're like, oh, I've got this question and I really, you know, want to get this question answered somehow. Then you can text this number and it will come to us, and it's a real live person. And I'm not saying that we'll reply to you at 11 o'clock at night, but within a few hours. So the next morning we would reply to you, or if you text us during office hours, we would reply within the next couple of hours. And so that's a real person that gets back to you. So if you don't really know what questions you have now, but you know you're going to have questions, it's a really good idea to opt into that texting platform, because you can text us and always get to a real person.